Howdy folks, this is Checkers back again with another Rambling with Checkers in Fallout 4. Once again, we are going to talk about some early video game history, some PC games from my early memories. This is a look at video game history from my perspective, what I saw as I actually lived through it. And also, I'm hoping once again that this Rambling with Checkers will be here to help the folks who don't want to see the Far Harbor content in our regular Fallout 4 Let's Play. They'll have an opportunity to watch some more Fallout 4, even if it's not part of the regular playthrough. So, when last we left our video game history, we were talking about... I have no idea who these people are who are fighting. We were talking about... Well, they're shooting at me. That's all that really matters. Oopsie. Well, let's get rid of her. Quickly. Okay, well, apparently we have found a gaggle of gunners. And, crotch shots for the win. Stimpack and a Ripper. Oh, we didn't want you using that on us, Sunshine. Why don't you just relax there on the floor? And we'll go talk with your captain here. Oh, hello. You people are just everywhere, aren't you? I don't normally use plasma weapons, so it's kind of fun. Okay, they're a little close, so let's just deal with the situation. Bottle cap ripper. Ah, that sounded like a ghoul. Bottle cap and a power fist. Anyway, as I was saying, when last we left our video game history... Okay, let's see if we can find that plasma weapon again, just because it's fun. Night vision boosted agitated plasma rifle probably is not... I just picked it up somewhere. It's not, like, tricked out or anything. So it could probably do better damage than it does, but... It beats a sharp stick in the eye. Well, maybe not in their perspective, but it does in mine. Oh, that car's already... done exploded.
Just one bad like not to get shot at. Just keep going.
There we go.
Look at all the blood.
Oh, hello. Anyway, so yeah, last time we were talking about video game history, we were talking about Ultima 5, and from here out, my chronology may be even fuzzier than it was before, only because it was 28 years ago, and I'm getting a little fuzzy about that time period, left, right, and center anyway. But as far as I can remember, as for the next game that really captured my imagination, it was a game called Caravan Guard, 9 bottle caps through 8 rounds, 10mm rounds. It was called Star Command by a company called SSI. Strategic Simulations Incorporated, I do believe, was the name. And I think it came out somewhere around 1988. And it was a sci-fi game in which you played the captain of a spaceship, but you also had a crew with officers, and I do believe you had like medical officers and other, you know, ship position officers, but you also had Marines who could do boots on the ground fighting, and you would take your ship out into space and you could encounter other spaceships, hostile and friendly. Not everything you met was hostile, so you often ended up sort of in talks, in negotiations with these other vessels. So like if you were in a quadrant somewhere and you were running out of fuel, you could negotiate to get more fuel from one of these other ships. And if they didn't want to sell it to you, you could literally point your guns at them and say, well, you know, I think you should reconsider. And there were several stages of threatening, right? It wasn't just like a binary choice of threaten or not threaten. There were different levels. You could threaten more, threaten even more, kind of threaten even more than that. It was pretty awesome because you could actually kind of feel the tension build as you did that sort of thing, as you threatened them more. And by the end, you'd either walk out with what you wanted, more fuel or whatever, or you'd walk into a fight, and that was fun too. And that was sort of the space, part of the space, because there was space combat too, and there was also Raider Survivalist. Interesting. Ooh, fragmentation grenade. Let's grab that. Oh yeah, I forgot. I haven't been doing explosions for the cards and things, so let's do that now. We'll set off an explosion for the Star Command spaceship portion. And so there was this, you know, you could, like I said, encounter other spaceships in space, but you could also find planets and scan them, and you would find resources and things that you might sell to other planets or you know, colonies or space stations, or you might run into a fallen civilization, or you might find hostile aliens, and at that point you would send your boots on the ground. Wow, glad I didn't get that far out there. You'd send your boots on the ground to go fight. And the combat representation for that was very, very simple. The sides were represented by letters and numbers. So like the letters would be maybe the good guys, the numbers would be the bad guys, and you would just kind of see them moving around. But it was very cool in the sense that it was, you know, more than one thing. It wasn't just a space flight game. It wasn't just a ground combat game. It was all these different things added together, in some ways kind of like XCOM, where there was just more to it than one sort of gameplay. And it kept it very fun and alive for me for a very long time. And I still remember it very, very, very fondly. It's one of my favorite games of the time period. And I mean, it may have been very obtuse. It was difficult to get into without the manual. If you didn't have the manual, you were kind of hosed, because all the weapons were referenced in the manual. So if you wanted to know anything about the references, because you could assign individual weapons to individual troopers and armor and the like, and without the manual you would never have known what those were. But with the manual it worked out pretty well, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, sort of a mix of Privateer and XCOM for those who know of those games. And I think I will burn 2 cards on Star Command just so you can see the ground combat and the space combat. So let's toss another grenade for whichever other video I found for Star Command. Hooray! So yeah, Star Command was a really amazing game and a lot of fun. And so we're roughly in the 88-89 time period now, I think. And the next game that I remember, and this is sort of like Wizardry 4 in the sense that it was something that introduced me to something, but I didn't play it very long because the sequel came out almost immediately from the time that I found it. So this next game was called Battlehawks 1942, and it was a Pacific Theater World War II fighter combat sort of flight simish sort of thing, and it was made by LucasArts and a fellow named Lawrence Holland. I think that's where he started. Eventually Lawrence Holland would go on to make many more flight sim type things like X-Wing and TIE Fighter, but for now Battlehawks 1942 is where we're at. And it was, you know, I had never seen anything like it. The closest thing I'd ever seen were the goofy, like, pseudo X-Wing versus TIE Fighter on my old Bally arcade, if you saw the Rambling with Checkers Video Game History 1 episode. So not very high tech and not very anything remotely like Battlehawks 1942. And oh, I guess we should throw an explosive for Battlehawks 1942. Huzzah! So I remember playing with that for a while, and I'm pretty sure I didn't have any kind of color graphics adapter yet for my computer, so I was just on an amber screen monitor. Barred door, huh? What's on the other side of the barred door, I wonder? But shortly after I found Battlehawks 1942, I found, or well, I guess the sequel released, I think. And like I said, my chronology may be a little off here, but the sequel was called, I think, Their Finest Hour Battle of Britain. So, another explosion is required. Let's throw it in the room, right over there. And back up just a touch. Okay. So, Battle of Britain, what we always called it, Bob, because the executable's name was Bob1940.exe, if I recall correctly. Oh, missile launcher, huh? A brigadier with a missile launcher. This could hurt. And so Bob 1940 was the Battle of Britain, and you could play as either the English RAF or the German Luftwaffe, yeah, and fly for either side. And my computer actually wasn't powerful enough to run it. I had to borrow, and I borrowed. Can we get into that barred door from here? Perhaps Stimpack Rad-X purified water. I would occasionally borrow my mother's computer because it was more powerful. Maybe the explosive unbarred the door? I'm not sure. But I would occasionally get to borrow my mother's 286, which was way more powerful than my 8088. But I wouldn't get to borrow it for very long. And, well, we needed an alternative solution. And since my computer wasn't going to hack it, we took it to the theater where we worked, and we surreptitiously installed it on the boss's computer in the boss's office. And when the boss went away at night after a show, we would stay extremely late and have ourselves the Midnight Flying Club. And we flew for England and for Germany, and we had a great time doing it. I mean, we would take turns playing on the boss's computer. Now, one of the things about playing games back in this time period, and I don't know if anybody talks about this much anymore, but back in the day, when you got a game, you got a card that came with the game, and the card... One second, please. Need to reload. There you go. Okay, 10 bottle caps and a missile launcher. So when you bought a game back in the day, back in these days that we're talking about, you got a card, a paper card that came with it, and it would tell you how to create a config.sys file and an autoexec file, basically files that would configure your DOS PC to work with the game. So you would get, you know, this paper that would say something like copycon config.sys, which meant, in DOS terms, copy from the controller into the file named config.sys, and then you would have whatever it is that you were going to enter. And the controller, if I didn't mention, was the keyboard. So essentially copy from the keyboard a file. So you, without a text editor, you could create this with DOS commands, essentially. And that would let you run your game. So it was a lot of memory extension stuff, finding ways to trick these old PCs into doing things that they really weren't meant to do. And so, anyway, by doing all of this, we learned how to do also other things, like hiding the Bob 1940 EXE as a mundane business type looking file in the boss's computer at the theater. So the boss could look all over his hard drive all day long and never find Bob 1940 because, well, Bob 1940 wasn't there. All we needed to do was make it look like something else. So the Midnight Flying Club lasted for quite a while, and that was a good time. It really was a very, you know, once again, a single-player game being played by a bunch of people in turn and just having a really great time doing it. And lots of good old stories and, you know, game war stories. And, yeah. And let's see. So we had 2 cards for Star Command, 1 for Battlehawks, 1 for Bob 1940. That leaves us with 1 card left. And so we'll talk about a sequel to a game from our last video game history episode. And that was Might and Magic 2. Not Heroes of Might and Magic, just straight Might and Magic 2. Might and Magic 2 was graphically considerably enhanced from Might and Magic 1. But still very similar. The 6-person based party and a lot of the spells were even the same codes. These spell codes I can tell you from Might and Magic 1 still, like C3-4 was a lightning bolt, I believe, and C3-1 was a fireball. And that was press the C key, then the 3 key, then the 1 key. So 3 meant level 3 and spell 1. And then C3-4 was cast level 3 spell, the 4th spell in the list. And yeah, Might and Magic 2 had a really interesting history with me, because one night at the theater, a bunch of us had agreed to go out, and I was waiting for some of the folks to show up, and it was a couple and another guy who I'd seen around the theater, never really talked to very much. And the couple never showed up, but the guy did. And when he showed up, he saw me playing this Might and Magic 2 game, and he had played Might and Magic as well. And so we got to talking about it, and that was how I met my best friend. It was pretty cool. We bonded over Might and Magic 2, and I was the best man at his wedding, and, you know, that was considerably later. Let's see. If Might and Magic 2 was roughly around 88, 89, it's, math. About 11 or 12 years before he got married, I think. And, still best friend to this day. And the other thing that was really cool about Might and Magic 2 was I found a suit of armor for my warrior, and it was G-scale plus 50, I think, or G-scale plus 150. I don't remember. I remember it was G-scale, and it had a number, but effectively what it did was raise his character level by 110. Oh, well, there is an ancient behemoth. I love the little squirt sound this thing makes. Doesn't seem to be quite effective, though. Let's try our old faithful. Much more effective. Hey, and a level. So I had this G-scale mail, and it raised my warrior's character level by 110, which meant that... Hey, there's another one of my automatrons outrunning a caravan. This unit is ready to... Right on, dude. You go. So, as I was saying, it raised his character level by 110, which meant that we could do fights that were nominally impossible in the game. And I found this one fight. It was the Cat from Hell, I think, was the name of the fight. And there were a bunch of... I think there were more than 100 sub-fights, and I think this is when my to-become best friend showed up. I was doing one of these fights. When you used the Gmail armor, you had to use it before the fight. That would raise the warrior's level, and it had, I think, unlimited charges. And so he would do the fight, and he would essentially have a kind of sweeping stroke, I think, that killed not only the Cat from Hell that should have been immortal to us, but everything with it. So the fight went on so long, I would have to leave a weight on the space bar just to keep the battle going. So literally I'd start the fight, activate the armor, make the first hit, everything would die, but because it took the computer so long to process it, I had 10 to 15 minutes to relax while the process took place of just counting who got hit and how much and who was going to die. But also because of all of this, because we were doing this impossible fight with so much experience, my party became incredibly powerful to the point where we didn't actually need the cool armor to do it anymore. And we could do it on our own. And so I always had really fond memories of Might and Magic. Not just one, but two. Because, well, you know, it was kind of exciting to do all that crazy stuff. And I found my best friend that way. So, a gunner lieutenant with a missile launcher. Just stick your head back up one more time. Thank you. And that was Might and Magic 5. Or sorry, 2. I did an explosion for that, right? If I didn't, well, we'll do an extra explosion anyway. Just kick one off for fun, in case I forgot. But I imagine I'll put a card up and an annotation up by this point anyway. For now, I think that I will say that this has been Checkers, with another episode of Rambling with Checkers and Video Game History 3, looking over Star Command and Battlehawks 1942, Their Finest Hour Battle of Britain, and Might and Magic 2. I would like to remind you that I have a Twitter link in the description of the video and on my channel main page. If you're on mobile, it'll be on my channel About page. Also, if you look in the upper right hand corner, you will see a small letter I with a white circle around it. These are cards and not videos that I have made, but linking to other videos on YouTube with the games that I mentioned earlier. I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you found the video informative and maybe just a little entertaining. I would like to invite you to subscribe, like and share if you so desire, and ask you to please take care.